Hey everyone, it's Mrs. Schultz. I just wanted to go ahead and touch bases with you since I am not there today. You just got done watching a video on mean absolute deviation. I thought this video did a great job of explaining exactly what mean absolute deviation is and how it can be used to interpret some data. I did also want you to be writing down some notes on your notes page. So if you didn't take down any of the notes of what mean absolute deviation is, I want you to go ahead and write it down now in your notes packet so we don't fall behind in our notes. Mean absolute deviation is the average distance between each data value and the mean. Because if you notice, every time we are figuring out how far is each data point from the mean and finding the average of that. And so that's exactly what we did. And I'm going to go very quickly through this first example, as I believe the other video did a good job explaining how to do it. So for this particular one, it says the table shows the heights of the first 8 people standing in line to ride a roller coaster. Find the mean absolute data for the set of data. Describe what the mean absolute deviation represents. And so what we did here is the first step is to simply find the mean, which we got, which was 56, because once I added all the numbers, I got 448, and I divided by 8. My second step is, just like the video showed, is to find the distance each data point is from the mean. And so with the numbers that were smaller than 56, I went ahead and wrote 56 minus that number. With the numbers that were, the data values that were larger, like 60 from here, like 60, I went ahead and I put 60 first, and I did 60 minus 56 and got 4. Now, I could just write the numbers and do all that math in my head. I like to write it down just to show my work. And just making note that if you did happen to flip them and you got a negative answer, every time we are finding the absolute value. So once I found all the distances, I then did my step 3, which is to find the average of the absolute values. And so therefore I added them all up and divided them by 8. So 30 divided by 8, and I got 3.75. Now what does that mean? That means that the average distance each person's height is from the mean is around 3.75 inches. Okay? And so that kind of concludes what you have in your notes packet. However, there's a page that was missing from your notes packet. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you what standard deviation is. And here, standard deviation is a calculated value that shows how the data deviates from the mean of the data. Now, I know some of you are thinking right now, do I need to write this down? Yes, right now would be a good time to find a piece of paper and write this down. If you need to pause the video, please pause the video. If you can fit this definition in at the bottom of your notes page, please do so. Standard deviation, again, is a calculated value. It's a value that you're not actually find. It's a value that's been given to you. So with mean absolute deviation, you have to find it. With standard deviation, it's been given to you. But they represent basically the same thing. The standard deviation of, so this problem number 2 here that I have says the standard deviation of the quiz scores for class A is about 1.2. Describe the quiz scores that are within 1 standard deviation of the mean. And what that means is once you find the mean, 1 standard deviation would be taking the standard deviation that they gave you and finding how far above the mean and how far below the mean that would take you. Again, standard deviation represents the same thing as mean absolute deviation. It's just standard deviations given to you in the problem like so. So with a standard deviation type problem, when I'm trying to understand it, I first have to find the mean. So I did here, and I went ahead and I calculated the mean and got 8.25. Now the question wasn't find the mean, it was Describe the scores that are within 1 standard deviation of the mean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recognize that the standard deviation is 1.2, and I'm going to go ahead and take my mean, that's 8.25, and I am going to subtract 1.25, and then I'm going to add 1.25 to get my range. This gives me a range of within 1 standard deviation of the mean. And so in order to, it asked me to describe the quiz scores. And so a description would say quiz scores that are between 7.05 and 9.45 are within 1 standard deviation of the mean. And basically what this does is this tells someone who's reading my data that if they are within that range, they are within 1 standard deviation of the mean, which is what we're looking for here. And that concludes our lesson for today. So I know, again, you didn't have the second part, but the part you needed to understand was what the definition of standard deviation is, and then how would I describe a data set that's within 1 standard deviation. And a description would simply be taking plus or minus 1 standard deviation from the mean and giving someone the range of what it would be. Alright guys, so now you can go ahead, you can ask the substitute for the worksheet that you'll be working on, and you will be able to finish that hopefully in class. Have a wonderful day. I will see you, or have a wonderful weekend. I will see you on Monday.